I used to think silence was weakness. Now I know it's the only language some people understand. The hospital corridor smelled like bleach and regret. I sat in the plastic chair outside the operating room, my left arm wrapped in bandages that were already soaking through with blood. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and somewhere down the hall, a machine beeped in steady rhythm. My mother stood 15 feet away, her back to me, phone pressed against her ear. She was talking to my sister Lily. I knew because her voice had that particular softness she reserved only for her. "Don't worry, sweetheart. Everything's fine. Clara just had a minor accident. No, you don't need to come home early from your retreat. Enjoy your spa weekend." A minor accident. I looked down at my arm, at the dark stains spreading across the white gauze. The doctors had said I was lucky. 2 more inches to the left and the shard of glass would have severed the artery completely. Lucky. That was the word they used when I'd nearly bled out in the front seat of a car that wasn't even mine. My father emerged from the operating room. Surgical mask pulled down around his neck. He was a doctor here, respected and admired. People trusted him with their lives. He glanced at me once, then walked past to where my mother stood. They spoke in low voices, but the hospital acoustics carried their words back to me like cruel gifts. "The other driver is stable," my father said. "No serious injuries. But Clara's story doesn't add up. The police want to talk to her again." "What do you mean?" My mother's voice tightened. "She claims Lily was texting her, that she got distracted trying to respond while driving. But Lily wasn't even in town. She's been at that wellness retreat all weekend." Could Clara have been lying? You know how she gets when Lily achieves something. Maybe she was jealous again, made up an excuse for her carelessness. The floor tilted beneath me. I gripped the armrest of the chair, feeling the stitches in my palm pull tight. I hadn't been lying. Lily had texted me 16 times in 10 minutes, each message more frantic than the last, begging me to confirm which boutique sold the dress she wanted, the one she'd seen on my Instagram story 3 weeks ago. The dress I'd bought with money I'd saved from working double shifts at the bookstore. The dress she needed because someone at her retreat had complimented her outfit and she wanted to impress them further. I'd pulled over twice to respond, but the messages kept coming, each one marked urgent with strings of exclamation points. And then the light had changed, and I was moving through the intersection, and my phone had buzzed again, and I'd looked down for just 1 second. The impact had sounded like the end of the world. My father sighed. "I'll talk to her. But if she's fabricated this story, there will be consequences. We can't have her damaging Lily's reputation with false claims." "Lily has worked so hard," my mother agreed. "That influencer contract she just signed could change everything for her. We can't let Clara's problems interfere." They walked back toward me together, unified in their certainty. My mother's face had already arranged itself into that expression I knew so well, disappointment tempered with obligatory concern. The look that said she was doing her duty as a parent, but wished she didn't have to. "Clara," my father began, his doctor voice in full effect. "The police have some questions about the accident. They've reviewed the phone records and Lily wasn't texting you," my mother interrupted, unable to maintain the pretense of gentleness. "Why did you lie?" The words stuck in my throat. I wanted to pull out my phone, show them the messages, prove that I wasn't fabricating anything. But my phone had been destroyed in the crash. The screen shattered into a spiderweb of cracks, and I couldn't even unlock it. The police had taken it as evidence, said they'd retrieved the data, but my parents weren't interested in waiting for the truth. They'd already decided which daughter deserved their belief. "I'm not lying," I said, but my voice came out hollow, defeated. "She was texting me. Check my records. Check hers." "We did," my father said coldly. "Lily's phone shows no outgoing messages to you this weekend. Not one." The hospital corridor seemed to narrow. "That's impossible. She messaged me over and over about a dress. My mother's face hardened. Enough, Clara. I don't know what kind of attention you're trying to get, but this has gone far enough. Your sister is building a career, a real future, and you're trying to sabotage her because you can't handle your own failures. I'm not. The pain in my arm flared sharp and bright. I almost died. Why would I lie about this? Drama, my mother said simply. You've always been dramatic. Ever since you were little, jealous of your sister's success, trying to pull focus back to yourself. Something inside me cracked. Not broke. I'd been breaking for years. This was the final fracture, the one that goes all the way through. I looked at my mother's face and my father's stern disappointment, and I understood with perfect clarity that nothing I said would matter. Lily had deleted the messages. Maybe she'd known, somehow, that the accident would happen. Or maybe she just panicked when she heard, erased the evidence to protect herself. It didn't matter which. The result was the same. I was alone in this. Fine, I whispered. Believe what you want. My mother's expression shifted to something almost like relief. Good. Then you'll tell the police the truth? That you were distracted, but it had nothing to do with your sister? I didn't answer. I closed my eyes and leaned my head back against the wall, feeling the cold concrete against my skull. The painkillers they'd given me were wearing off, and every nerve in my arm was screaming. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the hollow ache in my chest where my family's trust should have been. They left me there in the corridor. My mother went to call Lily back, probably to reassure her that the situation was handled. My father returned to his patients, his real responsibilities. And I sat alone, bleeding through my bandages, wondering how I'd become so invisible to the people who were supposed to see me first. The weeks that followed were a masterclass in isolation. The police investigation concluded that I'd been driving distracted. No evidence of external causes. The other driver sued for damages. My insurance rates skyrocketed. I lost my job at the bookstore because I couldn't work with my injured arm, and my parents refused to help with the medical bills, said it was time I learned about consequences. Lily came home from her retreat with a glowing tan and a new sponsorship deal with a wellness brand. She posted photos of green smoothies and yoga poses at sunrise, her smile radiant and untroubled. In one caption, she mentioned having a sister who was going through some things and asked her followers to send positive energy. The post got 40,000 likes. She never asked me about the accident. 3 months later, I stood on the balcony of my apartment, looking down at the street below. It was raining, one of those cold autumn rains that feels like the sky is crying. My arm had healed badly, the scar tissue thick and ropey, my grip permanently weakened. I'd lost my apartment because I couldn't make rent without the bookstore job. This place was temporary, a sublet from a friend who'd taken pity on me. I thought about Lily's latest post, the one where she talked about manifesting abundance and surrounding yourself with positive energy. The comments were full of people praising her wisdom, her light, her inspirational journey. No one knew that her journey was paved with the wreckage of mine. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Lily's coming home for Thanksgiving. Try to be civil, and please don't bring up the accident again. We've all moved past it. We've all moved past it. As if it were a minor disagreement, not the moment that had shattered my entire life. I set the phone down on the balcony railing. The rain was coming down harder now, drumming against the concrete, washing everything clean. Or maybe not clean, maybe just washing everything away. I thought about stepping forward, about how easy it would be to let gravity make the decision for me, about how quiet it would finally be, how still. Instead, I closed my eyes and felt the rain on my face. Cold, real, present. And then the exhaustion took me. Not the kind that sleep could fix, but the kind that lives in your bones, the kind that comes from fighting battles you can't win. My legs gave out. I slumped against the railing, and then I was sliding down. And then I was on the cold, wet concrete of the balcony floor, and then darkness. Pure, complete, merciful darkness. I woke up to sunlight and birdsong. My first thought was that I'd survived, that someone had found me and brought me to a hospital. But the bed beneath me was too soft, too familiar. I opened my eyes and saw my childhood bedroom ceiling, the one with the glow-in-the-dark stars I'd stuck up there when I was 12. Stars that had been painted over when I moved out 5 years ago. I sat up slowly. My arm didn't hurt. I looked down and saw smooth, unblemished skin where the scar should have been. No bandages, no pain. I touched my forearm gently, pressing into the flesh, waiting for the ache that never came. The clock on my nightstand read 7:47 a.m. The date displayed below it made my breath catch. 3 years earlier, the exact morning of the accident. I stood up and walked to the mirror. My face looked back at me, younger by 3 years, free of the fine lines that grief had carved around my eyes. I touched my reflection, half expecting it to shatter, like my phone screen had. This was impossible. But it was also undeniable. I'd been given a second chance. The understanding came with perfect clarity, no confusion or disbelief. Maybe because I'd already experienced the impossible, or maybe because some part of me had been waiting for exactly this. A cosmic do-over, a chance to rewrite the ending. My phone sat on the dresser, intact and glowing with notifications. I picked it up, scrolled through the messages. There they were, Lily's texts, starting to arrive. The first one had come 10 minutes ago. "Clara, are you awake? I need your help." I stared at the words, feeling something cold and sharp crystallize in my chest. Not anger, not anymore. Something cleaner than that, something like certainty. I deleted the message without responding. Then I blocked her number. My mother's voice drifted up from downstairs, talking on the phone. The same conversation I'd overheard 3 years ago, the one where she'd told Lily not to worry, to enjoy her retreat, that Clara's problems weren't important enough to interrupt her self-care weekend. I got dressed slowly, methodically. Jeans, a simple sweater, boots with good traction. I pulled my hair back into a ponytail and looked at myself in the mirror one more time. The girl looking back at me had lived through 3 years of hell and come out the other side. She'd been broken and dismissed and erased. She was done being invisible. I went downstairs. My mother was still on the phone, her back to me as she stood by the kitchen window. My father sat at the table reading the newspaper, reading glasses perched on his nose. The scene was so achingly familiar it hurt. "I'm going out," I said. My father glanced up. "Where?" "For a drive. Be back for lunch. We're having a family meeting about Lily's new opportunities." Of course they were. I nodded and grabbed my keys from the hook by the door. Outside, the morning was crisp and clear. My car sat in the driveway, the same car I'd crashed 3 years ago, now pristine and undamaged. I got in, started the engine, and sat there for a moment, hands on the steering wheel. In my original timeline, I would drive to the bookstore for my shift. Halfway there, Lily's texts would start coming in rapid-fire succession. I would pull over twice, but it wouldn't be enough. She would keep texting, demanding immediate responses, and eventually I would glance down at the wrong moment and the accident would happen. But I wasn't that version of Clara anymore. I drove carefully, following the speed limit, keeping my phone face down in the passenger seat where I couldn't see it. When it buzzed, because of course it buzzed, because Lily had other numbers, other ways to reach me, I didn't look. I kept my eyes on the road and my breathing steady. The bookstore shift passed without incident. My co-workers greeted me with the same casual friendliness they always had, unaware that I was carrying 3 years of future memories. I shelved books and helped customers and moved through the familiar rhythms, with with a strange sense of detachment, like I was watching myself from outside my body. At lunch, I didn't go home for the family meeting. I turned off my phone and went to a cafe by myself, ordered soup and bread, and ate slowly while watching people pass by the window. Every bite was deliberate. Every breath was mine. When I finally turned my phone back on, there were 37 missed calls and twice as many texts, most from my mother, demanding to know where I was. A few from my father, his messages clipped and stern, and several from Lily, escalating from confusion to irritation to outright fury. I read them all without responding. Then I went back to work. That night, when I finally came home, my mother was waiting by the door. Her face was tight with anger and something else, confusion maybe, or the beginning of real concern. "Where were you?" she demanded. "We waited for you. Lily needed you." "I was at work," I said calmly. "You didn't answer your phone." "I know." She blinked, clearly not expecting such a simple answer. "Clara, what's gotten into you? Your sister needed your advice about a dress," I said. She wanted to know about a dress I posted on Instagram, the blue one with the silver threading. My mother's mouth opened, then closed. "How did you—" "Because it's always something like that, isn't it? Something urgent and critical that only I can help with, that requires my immediate attention, no matter what I'm doing." "That's not fair. Your sister values your opinion." I looked at my mother, really looked at her, and saw something I'd been too hurt to see before. She wasn't malicious. She wasn't trying to hurt me. She simply loved Lily more, had always loved Lily more, and couldn't understand why that might be a problem. In her mind, it was natural to prioritize the daughter who shone brighter, who brought pride and reflected glory. I was the shadow, useful for support, but never the main attraction. Understanding this didn't make it hurt less, but it did make it clearer. "Mom," I said gently, "I'm not doing this anymore." "Doing what?" "Being available every second of every day, dropping everything whenever Lily needs something, putting my life on hold so hers can move forward." My mother's face went through several expressions at once: shock, indignation, and something that might have been hurt. "I can't believe you're being so selfish. After everything we've done for you—" "You're right," I interrupted. "I am being selfish, and I'm going to keep being selfish, because no one else is going to put me first." I walked past her and went upstairs to my room. Behind me, I heard her calling my father, her voice pitched with disbelief. But I didn't stop. I closed my door, sat on my bed, and finally let myself breathe. The next few weeks unfolded with careful precision. I went to work, came home, and maintained a polite but distant relationship with my family. When Lily came back from her retreat, she tried to corner me, demanded to know why I'd been ignoring her. "I've been busy," I said. "Busy? Clara, I needed you. I had a crisis." "What crisis?" She blinked. "The dress thing. I needed to know where you got that dress." "And was not knowing immediately catastrophic?" "Well, no, but then it wasn't a crisis." She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. We were in the living room, and our parents were watching from the kitchen doorway, witnessing this unfamiliar dynamic. Clara, who always gave in. Clara, who always helped. Clara, who always made herself smaller so Lily could be bigger. This Clara was different. "I don't understand you lately," Lily said finally. "You've been acting so weird, so cold. I've been acting like a person with boundaries." "Boundaries?" She said the word like it was foreign. "We're sisters. We don't need boundaries." "Yes," I said quietly. "We do." She left in a huff, and my mother followed her out, murmuring reassurances. My father stayed behind, studying me with his clinical doctor's gaze. "You've changed," he said. "Yes." "Any particular reason?" I almost told him. almost explained about the accident that hadn't happened, the 3 years I'd lived that he didn't remember, the pain of being dismissed and disbelieved. But what would be the point? He couldn't understand something he hadn't experienced, and I was tired of trying to make people see what they were determined to ignore. I just decided to focus on myself for a while, I said instead. He nodded slowly, still watching me like I was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. Well, don't lose sight of family in the process. I won't, I promised. But the family I meant was the one I was building with myself, the foundation of self-worth that no one could take away. 6 months passed. I kept my distance from Lily, responding to her messages politely, but no longer dropping everything to help. I picked up extra shifts at the bookstore and saved money. I started taking a photography class at the community centre, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for. Lily's influencer career continued to grow. She posted constantly, her feed a curated collection of perfect moments and inspirational quotes. My parents glowed with pride at every new milestone, every brand deal, every magazine feature. They stopped asking me to participate in family meetings about her opportunities. I'd made it clear I wasn't interested, and eventually they accepted my absence as the new normal. I should have felt lonely. Instead, I felt light. Then came the spring. Lily had been invited to speak at a wellness conference in the mountains, a 3-hour drive from home. She'd rented a car, planned the whole trip, posted about it extensively in the weeks leading up. It was a big opportunity, she said, a chance to meet important people in the industry. The morning she left, I woke up with a strange feeling in my chest. Heavy, ominous, like something was pressing down on my lungs. I tried to shake it off, went about my morning routine, but the feeling persisted. My phone rang at 2:47 p.m. My mother, her voice fractured and high. There's been an accident. The hospital was the same one I had been taken to in my previous life. Same fluorescent lights, same smell of bleach and regret. I walked through the corridors with a sense of surreal déjà vu, my footsteps echoing against linoleum. My parents were in the waiting area outside the ICU. My mother was crying. My father had his arm around her shoulders. They looked up when I approached, and my mother reached for me instinctively. She was texting, my mother sobbed. The police said she was texting and driving. Clara, she was texting you. The floor tilted. What? Her phone records. She sent you 15 messages in 10 minutes. You didn't respond, and she kept trying, and then she... My mother couldn't finish. I pulled out my phone with numb fingers, scrolled through my messages. There they were. Texts from Lily, sent this afternoon while she was driving, each one more frantic than the last. Clara, why aren't you answering? I need to talk to you about something important. This is serious. Please respond. Clara, I can't believe you're ignoring me. I hadn't seen any of them. I'd been in the bookstore stockroom organising inventory with my phone in my locker. I didn't know she was texting me, I whispered. I was at work. My father's face was grey. The other driver said Lily ran a red light. She wasn't paying attention. By the time she looked up, he didn't finish. He didn't need to. A doctor emerged from the ICU, the same tired expression I'd seen on my father's face 3 years ago. Family of Lily Chen? My mother stood up. Yes, how is she? Stable, but critical. She has a severe concussion, broken ribs, and internal bleeding. We've managed to stop the hemorrhaging, but the next 48 hours are crucial. Can we see her? My mother asked. One at a time, and only for a few minutes. My mother went first. She was in there for 10 minutes, came out with red eyes and shaking hands. My father went next, stayed for 5. When they both looked at me, I shook my head. You go, I said. I'll wait. My mother started to protest, then seemed to remember all the times I'd pulled away, all the distance I'd maintained. She nodded and went back in with my father. I sat in the plastic chair and stared at my phone. At Lily's messages, sent in desperation while she drove, the same desperate need for immediate response that had nearly killed me 3 years ago. Except this time, the roles were reversed. This time, I'd been the one who wasn't available. The one who'd prioritised my own life over her urgency. Was this karma? Cosmic justice? The universe's way of showing me that the accident was always meant to happen, just to a different sister? I thought about the template of my life, the pain, the betrayal, the rebirth. I'd been so focused on avoiding my own destruction that I hadn't considered I might be redirecting it instead. Or maybe it wasn't about karma at all. Maybe it was about patterns. Lily had learned over years of getting everything she wanted immediately that her needs were paramount, that other people existed to serve her timeline, her emergencies, her crises, and that behaviour, that assumption of instant availability had finally caught up with her. Not because I'd wished it on her, not because I'd wanted revenge, simply because actions have consequences, and she'd never learned to wait. The realisation settled over me like a heavy blanket. Not satisfaction, not triumph, just a deep, sad understanding that we'd both been shaped by the same family dynamics. Her into entitlement, me into invisibility, and both patterns were destructive in their own ways. My mother came out of the ICU again, tears streaming down her face. "She's asking for you." I stood up slowly. "What?" "Lily. She's awake and she's asking for you. Please, Clara. She needs to see you." I followed my mother through the double doors, past the nurse's station, to a small room where Lily lay in a bed surrounded by machines. Her face was pale, bruised on one side. An oxygen mask covered her nose and mouth. Her eyes found mine as soon as I entered. My mother squeezed my hand once, then left us alone. I approached the bed carefully. Lily reached up with one shaking hand and pulled the oxygen mask down. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I said nothing. "I was trying to reach you. I wanted to—" She stopped, winced. "I wanted to apologise. For everything. For the dress thing, for all the times I made my problems your problems, for never asking how you were doing." "Why now?" I asked quietly. "Because I thought I was going to die." Her eyes filled with tears. "I saw the intersection, saw the red light, and I couldn't stop in time. And in that moment, all I could think was that you'd been so distant lately, and I didn't know why, and I was terrified that I'd die without understanding what I'd done wrong." I sat down in the chair beside her bed. The anger I'd carried for 3 years, in this timeline and the last, had nowhere to go anymore. She was broken and bleeding and finally seeing me as something other than an accessory to her life. "You didn't do anything wrong," I said. "You just never learned that other people have their own lives." "I know that now." She reached for my hand. I let her take it. "I'm so sorry, Clara, for being so selfish, for making everything about me, for not seeing how much I was asking of you. The accident wasn't your fault," I said, even though part of me wondered if it was. If the universe had arranged this moment as some kind of cosmic lesson, a mirror of my own experience reflected back. It was just bad timing. "No." Lily's grip tightened. "It was my fault. I was driving distracted because I couldn't stand that you weren't answering, because I trained myself to expect you to drop everything, always, and when you didn't—" She stopped, started crying. "I'm so sorry." I sat there holding her hand while she cried, and I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness, not exactly, but something like understanding. We'd both been victims of our family's dynamics, just in different ways. She'd been elevated and enabled, turned into someone who couldn't function without constant validation. I'd been diminished and dismissed, turned into someone who couldn't see her own worth. "We're going to be okay," I said finally. "Both of us." She nodded, pulled the oxygen mask back up, and closed her eyes. I stayed with her until she fell asleep, then went back out to the waiting room where my parents sat huddled together. "How is she?" my mother asked immediately. "Resting? She's going to be okay." My mother's shoulders sagged with relief. My father pulled her closer. And in that moment, I saw them clearly too. Not as villains, not as the source of all my pain, but as flawed people who loved imperfectly, who'd made choices they thought were right and never questioned them deeply enough. "Mom," I said, "we need to talk, all of us, about how this family works, about the patterns we've fallen into." She looked up at me, surprised. "Now?" "Not now, but soon. When Lily's better, because this," I gestured to the ICU, to the hospital, to everything that had happened. "This isn't sustainable." My father studied me with that same puzzled expression he'd worn months ago. "You really have changed." "Yes," I said, "I have." Lily recovered slowly over the next month. The physical injuries healed, but the emotional impact lingered. She was different afterward, quieter, more thoughtful, less certain of her place in the world. We had the family talk I'd insisted on. It was uncomfortable and painful, with tears and defensive arguments and moments when I thought the whole thing would collapse into accusations. But we worked through it. My parents began to see how their favoritism had damaged both of us. Lily began to understand how her demands had eroded our relationship. And I began to speak up about my needs without guilt. It wasn't perfect. Families never are. But it was better. Lily's influencer career continued, but she approached it differently. Less emphasis on perfection, more honesty about struggles. She started talking openly about the accident, about what she'd learned, about the importance of being present and not distracted. Her followers responded well. Apparently, authenticity was just as marketable as the polished facade had been. She also started asking about my life, really asking and really listening to the answers. We'd never be as close as sisters in storybooks, but we were building something real and honest, something that could last. As for me, I kept working at the bookstore, kept taking my photography classes, kept building a life that was mine. I moved out of my parents' house into my own small apartment. I dated casually, made new friends, discovered parts of myself I'd buried for years. One evening, a year after the accident, I stood on my apartment balcony watching the sunset. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, and the air smelled like rain coming. My phone buzzed with a text from Lily. "Having dinner with Mum and Dad tomorrow. Want to join?" I smiled and typed back, "Sure, what time?" 6 p.m. "And Clara, thank you for everything, for not giving up on us." I set the phone down and leaned against the railing, the same way I'd done in another life, in another timeline, when I'd been too exhausted to keep fighting. But this time, I wasn't tired. This time, I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The rain started to fall, gentle and clean. I turned my face up to the sky and let it wash over me, baptism by water and second chances. In my first life, I'd learned that silence could be a prison. In this one, I'd learned it could be a choice. The power wasn't in making people hear me, it was in knowing my own worth, regardless of whether they listened. Lily had crashed trying to follow my path, or maybe trying to pull me back onto hers. Either way, the collision had forced us both to stop and look at the road we were on. And sometimes that's what it takes. Not cruelty, not revenge, but a moment so stark and undeniable that everyone has to pause and reconsider. I didn't need my family to validate me anymore. I didn't need Lily to apologize, though she had. I didn't need my parents to finally see me. though they were trying. I needed only what I'd found in the silence of that hospital corridor, in the moment before everything ended and began again. The certainty that I was enough, all by myself, without anyone else's approval or acknowledgement. That was the rebirth. Not waking up in my childhood, bed with memories of another life, not changing the timeline or avoiding the accident. The real rebirth was the moment I stopped waiting for someone else to save me and realised I'd been my own rescue all along. The rain fell harder, drumming against the concrete, washing everything clean, and I stood there in the storm, alive and whole and finally at peace. The protagonist always reclaims control. The antagonist always faces recognition and regret. Power shifts silently through emotional symmetry. But the real victory wasn't in what they lost or learned. It was in what I found, myself, complete and undiminished, needing nothing from anyone but the breath in my lungs and the choices I made each day. I turned away from the balcony and went inside, closed the door on the rain, and made myself tea. Simple, ordinary, mine. And in that simplicity, in that ordinary moment of caring for myself, I found everything I'd been searching for. Stillness, balance, quiet satisfaction. The story ended not with confrontation or triumph, but with this: a woman in her apartment, holding a warm cup, watching the rain through the window, knowing she was exactly where she needed to be, knowing she was home.